they probably, I'm going to guess, in Iowa, if we're talking the Czechs here in Iowa, this is a traditional Czech dish as well. In Iowa, we are a big dairy country. We have cows, we have pigs, we have all of that, so you can churn your own butter. Flour, you know, if we're talking in the 1900s, flour, white flour is readily available from the stores. If we are talking the 1860s, we might still be milling. You know, we're still having to take our own personal grain to the mills and get it ground. Sugar, yeah, that's usually shipped in. That's pretty common trade. Eggs, everybody's going to keep chickens. Vanilla can be interesting because sometimes you had to make your own vanilla. Did I actually put vanilla in here? I don't think I did. That would have been bad. That's what I desperately need. Vanilla, we are today using the usual modern imitation vanilla extract. They would have, depending on how far back you're going, they would actually have ordered vanilla beans and soak it in alcohol. In a bottle, you get a vanilla bean, you put it in a bottle of alcohol, and that's where you get your vanilla flavoring from. Everybody kept chickens. If you didn't keep chickens, you kept duck and geese, and you can use their eggs too to cook with. There's really no difference. Yeah, it's very simple fare. Cows, they did have a lot of beef dishes, so they did keep cows. You'd need that, and I would believe that even the fairly simple peasant farms in Bohemia would have at least had one good cow, because they have they have butter in everything. So a lot of this stuff calls for butter, a lot of it calls for milk. So yeah, it's pretty common. Well, here we have Cedar Rapids is a huge mill town. So it's going to be a no problem. Flour is readily available from any grocery store, general store, mercantile. By the 18s, I don't know, possibly as late as the 1870s, 1880s. They're going to have, because Cedar Rapids is a mill town, the way the river is set up and the rapids on the river, that was the first business here. That's why so many settlers came here. It's a perfect place to set up a mill race. In fact, that was the first thing Cedar Rapids built as a community, was a dam for mills. And we had 6 or 7 mills in this town. We had flouring mills, we had sawmills, we had just every kind of mill. Woolen, I think there was a woolen mill, all sorts of things. So flour was really easy. Basically, you either took your grain to town, you sold it, and bought it as flour on the other end. In the very early pioneer times, you took your grain to the mill, you took wagon, you took some to sell, but you also took some just for you. You know, and you I don't know if they had it arranged so that you'd take a wagon load of grain to the miller kept a portion for his cut, for payment, that he could sell, and then you took, you know, the rest back home to cook and feed with. Most of the pioneers had some sort of mill they even brought with them, even if it was a coffee mill. They were grinding their corn with coffee mills. So yeah, that was really the most essential thing. And I think I read the very first mill in Iowa was a hollowed out log. And they had some sort of stone or something that went in it, and it took 2 or 3 guys pounding on it, and they'd break it. I mean, that was it. It was like 1830 something. So it's what they had to get. By the 1860s, we had mills within driving distance almost everywhere. There were mills. I know in Linn County, on my farm, there were 2 mills within 2 miles each way. Wherever there was a creek, or a stream, somebody had a mill going. Henry Usher here, by the 1850s, they didn't even need water. They were running steam sawmills. So if you had a steam engine, you could get a mill going of some type. So it's pretty easy. The biggest part, I would say, in pretty much all of Iowa cuisine, doesn't matter what culture you're coming from, is November is butchering time. So you've got the hogs. Usually everybody had at least 1 hog to butcher. You guys have to kill the hog, women have to butcher it and cut it up into pig parts and, you know, process it. And then the most important thing to come out of that of the byproducts is the fat and the tallow, because either my grandmother, her Czech tradition, or I don't know exactly where she came by this, but in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, when they would put up pork for the winter, she would fry it down. The minute they cut it up, fresh pork, she would fry it down in the skillet. They would take it fried, and they would pack it in lard in crocks. So they would fry down all the meat, they'd put it in the crocks, and then they would cover the crocks with molten lard. And then it would solidify, and it would keep all year. So then you just dig it out and fry it back up, and you're good to go.
So it's essentially cooked when it's stored.
It's pre-cooked when it's stored.
But it's stored in lard, which is not cooked.
Which is not cooked. The lard is melted down.
Melted down.
You melt the lard, so you're pouring the hot fat over it, and then it's gonna, kind of like bacon grease, it's gonna solidify when it cools. What that does is seal all the air and the microorganisms and everything out of the meat. And then they could keep it in the cellar at room temperature for up to a year. All winter long, and they'd still be eating on it until next November. That was still being done probably the 1930s, is my guess. That was the 30s and the 40s. We were still doing that. I still have a lot of crocks. They were that tall. Yeah, those are some of the butchering crocks. Sauerkraut was huge. Sauerkraut was usually smaller crocks. It was a open crock process. You had boards. You'll see. That's the one thing we kind of miss today is we don't see the tops for the crocks. They use wooden boards, and you got to keep the kraut and everything pressed down in the brine. Lehman's non-electric catalog is starting to make the boards and the tops and things that go into crocks, so you can use them for sealing and pickling and whatever. So that's part of the process. Yeah, they did a lot of kraut. They did a lot of pickles. One of the things people forget about Cedar Rapids is we had a pickle works in Cedar Rapids from the 1860s until about the 1880s, I think, give or take. My great-great-grandfather had one of the first pickle farms in Cedar Rapids, out on Mount Vernon Road. And that was, they grew cucumbers for the pickle works. And I already have more pickles or cucumbers than I can eat, so I can imagine if you're growing like 40 acres of cucumbers, good lord.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the big staple diets. You either pickled it, you brined it, you smoked it, you salted it, or you larded it.